Hello, this is Angelica Yingst, and you're listening to Centered, grounded conversations about the metaphysical. Blessed Lughnasadh, or Lughnasadh, as we pronounce in English, or Lammas, depending on whatever you call it, it is the first of the harvests on the Wheel of the Year. So it's Angelica Yingst. I'm here with your Wheel of the Year, Lughnasadh, history and reading. So maybe I will just call it Lammas if you I'm going to struggle with Lughnasadh. But like I said, it is the first of the harvest sabbats on the Wheel of the Year. It is called Lammas, literally translating from the Welsh or the Old English as Loafmas, meaning it is the celebration of the bread loaves because it honors the first harvest of wheat, which is the most delicate of the harvest. And it's celebrated on sundown from July 31st to August 1st. And that can be changeable depending on the timing of your harvest. And one of the things about Lughnasadh is that it really was marking how the whole community handled the winter. You know, if you're harvesting the wheat early, that means that your stores didn't last. And so you're going to make changes and all those kind of things. So we think of Lughnasadh as the middle of summer because, you know, we start summer on summer solstice. But in the Wheel of the Year, summer starts on Beltane, and that's May 1st. So we're looking at the end of summer, the beginning of autumn, because the three harvests come at the beginning, the middle, and the end of autumn, the harvest season. And that would be Lammas, Mabon, and Samhain. Okay? So Lughnasah's name really derives from the Celtic god Lugh, spelled L-U-G-H, but pronounced Lugh. He was a god associated with the sun and with handicrafts, so skills of man, like smith crafting, building, those kind of things. He was also a warrior and one of several gods who must die to be reborn. And some say this festival, considered one of the greater sabbats on the wheel, originated with Lugh himself. So the legend says that the first Lughnasadh was a funeral feast and sporting competition to honor Lugh's foster mother. And I'm going to butcher her name, so it's spelled Tailtiu. Taltu is how I would assume it's pronounced, but not sure. And she died of overwork because she was clearing the plains of Ireland so people could grow crops. So other traditions say that this is the feast of mourning and honoring of Lugh's supreme surrender when he transforms himself into John Barleycorn. So this is the living spirit of the grain. And so some of you may have heard of John Barleycorn. There's a song, and I know in recovery, in our literature in Alcoholics Anonymous, we refer to John Barleycorn as kind of the representative of alcohol. But John Barleycorn was truly the living spirit of the grain and the living spirit of the grain that fed the people, right? So Lugh transforms into John Barleycorn, then sacrifices himself to sustain the community. So as the grain is cut down, so is he. And then he's ground down, baked into bread, eaten, and then is reborn as the seed is sown again. So Lughnasadh honors that first harvest and the sacrifices we all make for the greater good. So August's abundance flows in for both the farmer and the tender of the earth. So the crops are plentiful right now. You can be gathering, you can be hunting, you know, all of those things are happening. But the first harvest wields the best seeds for next planting season. And so they were honored as well. Leslie Carson beautifully captures this in her Lammas invocation by saying, "How many grains in an ear of corn? 100, maybe 2. But how many ears may lie in a grain if returned to the soil? With the God's blessing, only God can say." So agrarian cultures really honored the entire cycle of birth, life, and death, or sowing, growing, and harvesting, and then resting, of course. So sacrificing some of the beautiful crops that you had to make way for next year's abundance was part of the cycle. You had to both not only sacrifice some for seeds, but sacrifice them for your animals, which, obviously going to take care of your animals first. So Lughnasadh is the first of the festivals honoring the bounty from the mother aspect of the goddess. So we talk about the triple goddess in pagan circles, and that is the maiden, the mother, and the crone. So the maiden is, the pre-mothered woman, right? She has her right as menarche, and the mother, her right is childbirth. And of course, the crone is the dying aspect of the mother, the older. So really, it counts as anyone over 50 or anyone who's been through menopause, because menopause is her right. So people would create people-shaped bread and bake it in the fire. As the fire cooled, the bread was eaten, and that's hence the name Lammas or Lammas. So this is a time of honoring the harvesting of grain. So wine, beer, oils, mead were also created for the celebrations. These were offerings that were left in the field and the trees. Lu and the other gods and goddesses were being honored for the blessing of the harvest and for continuing harvests. So grain gives the community so much they can use. A good harvest means a winter with full bellies, while a poor harvest could mean starvation and suffering. So Lughnasadh honors the abundance and sacrifice. The abundance and sacrifice that comes from an entire year of hard work, as they're both preparing and harvesting at the same time. So hard work and sacrifice for the greater good. This is what Lughnasadh is all about. And so we think about preparing, like, what do we need to give up? What do we need to sacrifice to make our abundance come flowing, right? So, one of the things too that I focus a lot on, like, individual work, because we can only really change ourselves. But this is really one of the sabbats that you are really focusing on community. Community is absolutely essential. In spiritual communities are essential. Our community, this was essential in agrarian societies. We had to rely on each other. And so, I encourage everyone to be in community, in spiritual community. I mean, most of us have, created our own communities with friendship groups and with work friends, and then with, our spiritual work and whatever, But those of us who have, say, moved away from going to an organized religion, we find that we miss that community of religion. And so we can create them by women's circles or men's circles, or, creative circles, or Reiki shares, or prayer groups, or meditation groups, or, recovery communities are wonderful for that. So, we are very, very grateful to be kind of in the flow of community, and we honor community with this work too. And, actually that we're in the middle of a full moon in Aquarius, and we're really thinking about the collective. We actually have one of our stones that we're working with this month is spirit quartz. So if you haven't listened to that, you may want to go listen to the earth medicine reading for the month, because we talk about that too. So thinking about community is really good and really important part of Lammas. So, we're kind of thinking about the sacrifice for the greater good of the community. And this transmits a really powerful message for all of us that, when we're trying to survive, we have to rely on each other. And you know what? We're always trying to survive. The illusion that everything is, that's mine and that's yours, and you believe this thing, and so we can't be friends, and blah, 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 blah. That's all very damaging for community. So again, focusing on what those things mean to you might be very helpful right now. So agrarian cultures and community, are not only dependent on each person in the community, they're dependent on each person's unique gifts. So not everybody was trying to do everything for their home. Like, have you ever felt overwhelmed by the fact that you are the accountant, the shopper, the laundry person, the cleaner, the house cleaner, the nursemaid, the child's teacher, like all of the things, right? You're the cook, you're the cleaner, you're the dishwasher. In a community, we all have a role, and it's very easy to demonize people that are, hey, not doing things the way you think they should be doing them. But if we believe in the interconnectedness of nature and humans, then we also have to believe in the interconnectedness between every single kind of personality and every single contribution that someone has. So I know what you're saying, like, Angie, what is that person communicating, or what is that person contributing to our society? And all I'm going to say is maybe we don't have the privilege to be able to see that, but I know that we will use everything that comes in our path. We're not going to waste anything. And so that person's unique contribution is going to be super important. So, we really are dependent on each person for the flow of harvest and the community. So, we're really looking at this time of the year at our relationship with, first of all, abundance and flow. Are we ready to accept abundance? And are we able to just enjoy and be present with the abundance? And also recognize what sacrifices have we made for what's coming to us right now? Or do we need to make a sacrifice for the greater good, for everyone's health and happiness? So we can just kind of release this old way of being via fire, because Lughnasadh was considered a solar festival. So honor it, thank it. It served you once, release it, and whatever that it is, whatever that is, old way of being, something that isn't serving you anymore, maybe a habit or a food or, anything that you feel is standing in your way from living toxically shame-free. Okay. I have a friend who says, I find shame very useful. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't. But also, what she distinguishes as is, when I feel shame, I know I'm not living in alignment. And I'm like, okay, I get that. But, for me, all shame is toxic. So I just like to say, getting rid of shame. But I like to make that distinction because I think she makes a really good point that some of us do find that very useful. And she comes from a Buddhist practice, which, says guilt and shame are, useful. And so everything is useful if we get to switch it around. So we're really thinking about the fruits of our labor and our hard work, and also how they can be a useful part of our storehouse. And so, again, I really do think that means both the positive things that we have brought forth and also the difficulties we've gone through. I used to think the worst thing that could happen was me being an alcoholic, and now I realize it's the best thing. So it just shows me that I don't really know what's good for me. And so one of the things that we do when we harvest is we separate the grain from the chaff, and we ground the grain into flour. So the chaff is the outer coating that, it can be filler, and some people do use it, but it is better to just have the grain. And so when we separate those things, we don't judge the chaff of being bad. We're just simply separating it. And so as you're kind of going through your own inventory and doing that, you can separate the grain, which is the wisdom that you've gained, and the chaff, which is, the hard emotions, the resentments, the anger, all of that. And we're going to ground our experiences into flour, bake it, and understand that has this life-giving sustenance. All is true, right? We can have difficult things and also be abundant, right? So all of the intentions we've ever set, we can kind of see how they've manifested. Maybe it isn't exactly how you thought, but we can kind of see, I want to save the important parts, the green and the seeds, but I, want to get rid of the chaff, which is the resentments and the filler information there. It doesn't matter how I got there necessarily. I don't have to tell myself the story, but the wisdom and the lessons I'm taking forth are really important. So some great journal prompts for this time of year is to think about, what have you sacrificed this year? What blessings have you called in? If you planted any seeds at Imbolc, if you did an Imbolc ritual, think about what seeds you planted and know that this is when you're harvesting them. This is the time that you should be seeing some of those things come to fruition. So can you see a connection between your sacrifices and your blessings? And if so, how? Let's write about that. This is all journal prompts and journal information. So what abundance are you ready to call in? And then what stands in your way of the abundance? When you think about sacrifice, what does that bring up to you? Are you feeling fear or like you want to run away, or is that something that you're comfortable with? Talk about what sacrifice means. We do know that sacrifice, the word itself means to make sacred. Okay, so think about that as well. And then where do you feel that word in your body? Like when you say sacrifice, where do you feel it in your body? And does it scare you? And in what ways have you sacrificed in the past that felt important? In what ways have felt unproductive? So in terms of rituals, it's pretty traditional to have a feast day on Lughnasadh, and it's pretty traditional to create a corn dolly. So there are instructions I'll post in the notes section, but you can use wheat, corn, you can even use raffia or something like that. Anything is that it can create a dolly which you can sacrifice. And so it's a wonderful way to kind of call in and release information. So you can use cob of corn or Indian corn or any kind of corn too for your altar and your sacred space. Some people use corn masa for casting the circle, and kind of like putting a big circle of corn flour. Masa is flour. And so I think it can be really useful to kind of meditate on Leslie Carson's beautiful prayer where she says, how many grains in an ear of corn? 100, maybe 2, but how many ears may lie in a grain if it's returned to the soil? And then with the goddess's blessing, or with God's blessing, and only God can say. So thinking about this can be a really nice way to kind of honor with the corn somehow. So you can bring your corn dolly and think about what you're ready to sacrifice for abundance that you want to call in. So maybe if you want more money in your bank account, are you willing to give up goodies? Which goodies? What kind of spending do you want to give up? Are you willing to sacrifice nights out to dinner or living lavishly or above your means so that you can save money and maybe go on a vacation or something like that? So are you willing to, like if you want to call love in, what are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to be uncomfortable by approaching someone who's attractive and say, hey, would you like to have coffee? You're very beautiful. Or are you willing to face rejection? That's so hard for us. Are you willing to talk to someone that you really care about behaviors that might be hurting you? Again, a sacrifice of comfort. So put care and love into your little dolly, and write what you're willing to sacrifice for your goal on your dolly. Write a note about what you're willing to sacrifice and sew it or tie it to her hands. Put it somewhere on your doll. And when you're ready, prepare your sacred space. So you're going to either smoke cleanse or drum yourself in. Light candles. You can traditionally use colors like gold and yellow, sometimes orange. If you want to use stones, citrine, spirit quartz, those are going to be great ones. Pyrite. You can put an ear of corn on your altar, or wheat, like a bundle of wheat. Anything growing or healthy can be really helpful too. Because this is a day of gratitude, you can honor your blessings through the year. And then what has led you to this place? Every part of your journey is important. So tell the story. What are you ready to bring in? What are you ready to call in? And then hold the corn dolly in your hand and imagine yourself having all that you want and need. And after you visualize that, see yourself doing all the hard work and sacrifices with ease and grace, and state what you're willing to sacrifice for your goals. So when you're ready, state, this corn dolly represents all the sacrifices I'm willing to make for my goal. and then light a fire. Now you can do it outside in a bonfire, which is traditional, or you can just do it in something that's fireproof. And you put the corn dolly in the fire as a symbol of your willingness to make sacrifices. A lot of people are like, I am attached to my corn dolly. It's so beautiful. Okay, make two. Okay, one to sacrifice and one that represents your sacrifices so that you can look at it all year. Remember, you can do this corn dolly work any time of the year, but it's traditional during Lammas. So a great affirmation right now is I sacrifice what no longer serves to make room for the new. So that's from my upcoming book, Cycles, which is all about different personal rituals that you can use. Now, I did create a Lammas spread, which is in my book. So if you have my book, you can use that. It's also on Instagram, but it's basically a 7-card pull, and it is about looking at what supports you, what you're ready to sacrifice, those kind of things. So if you're really stuck on what that is, maybe a card pull would help you. I decided not to do a collective reading this time and just give you some rituals and journaling information, but I hope that's cool, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to Centered with me, Angie Yingst. If you'd like to send me a question or comment about this show or any shows, you can send them to Angie@themoonandstone.com.